Perhaps we should just dig a bit deeper into
Let's
it.
go
Since
here.
we
We have to. When we have this guy who knows the story from the inside, it's really cool.
But I certainly agree. There are a number of seminal moments in AI, and I think the Jeopardy challenge was one. I think the Deep Blue when they beat Kasparov was another. How would you rate those two in the IBM history of AI? As like, which one was the greater challenge to actually overcome?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd be reluctant to sort of pitch the two against each other, because it's difficult. Once something is shown to be possible, you forget how tough it was to actually try it. So, and
just for people that perhaps not know about these, Kasparov and Deep Blue, that was in '97, right?
Yeah,
and
96, 97.
Yeah, and when I hear about this, some people come up to me and say, Deep Blue didn't have AI. At all. What's your reply to that?
Yeah, so that, I guess, brings us back to the definition of intelligence. Yes. And I know there's a lot of nitpicking when it comes to that term. I stick to a very, very homemade definition of artificial intelligence. And that is, to me, it is intelligence without biology. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the only definition I stick to when it comes to artificial intelligence. Then you have
to know what intelligence is, right?
Yes, and then people say, oh, but that doesn't give us anything, right? Mm-hmm. And then, so when I'm asked, and I think you were at that event where we were both participating, and that at that event there was this guy who said, because I had misunderstood something. But basically, there was a case, a ruling in the U.S., like a pornography case, and there was a famous quote by the judge of that case on pornography, and he said, "Well, I can't give you a definition of pornography, but I recognize it when I see it."
Mm-hmm. Good,
right? Like and I have taken that to heart, and to me that is true of art. Mm-hmm. Like, what is art? You define art, and good luck with that. I stick to Marcel Duchamp, who says, "Well, art is what I say it is."
I have a very controversial definition, but I won't say it.
No, please, no,
go on.
No. But we don't talk more now, because me and Goran is so upset when this guy comes up with and he does it afterwards when we have a couple of beers. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to push this, Anders. Come on. Oh, you don't like this. He doesn't like it. Sorry, man.
I don't want to take too much time here. I mean, it's really Patrick that's we're going to speak about. But the very short version is it's a work that you don't have any use for.
That's all.
But I agree with that. I think that is precisely it, right? Art is an extremely interesting topic, and I think it is really, really, really important for programmers, coders, developers to think of themselves as artists and alchemists. And if they don't do that, they are selling themselves short, because what they're doing is short of magic. I mean, it's amazing stuff, right? They create things out of nothing. I love it, right? Yeah. And some things are certainly not useful, I guess, but maybe it is. And it
can be useful from a psychology point of view, or for perhaps not always practical reasons, but for other reasons.
Absolutely. So I sort of, to answer your question, what is intelligence? I recognize it when I see it, but I certainly I expect a couple of things to be in play. Like I expect intelligence. I expect a system that I then define as an artificial intelligence system to be context aware. To some extent, I sort of, if you think of understanding as being able to put something into context, like if you have a mathematical rule, it doesn't depend on context. 2 + 2 is 4, regardless of whether it's Tuesday or Thursday or raining outside. Doesn't matter.
2 cars or 2 elephants. 2 + 2 is 4.
A little bit like that.
But 5 ants is more than 4 elements.
That's it. 5 ants is more than 4 elephants.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a very good example of.
and that's this. Great, right? So I expect out of intelligence, I expect a sensitivity to context, understanding. I also expect a certain element of improvement over time, like an element of learning. Like if you can't change with new information, that's not intelligence. So there needs to be a learning element there.
I'm not sure if you've seen there was the founder of Keras, he recently wrote a paper last year where he tried to define intelligence. Have you seen it, or should I?
No, I haven't.
I can just recap very quickly his way of talking about intelligence and see if you agree or not with it. But the way he spoke about it is intelligence is skill acquisition efficiency. So what that means, skills can be many different things. Skills can be playing chess, it can be answer Jeopardy challenges, it can be driving a car or whatnot, or playing a violin or something. It's a large number of different skills you can imagine you have or have not. And then you want to acquire it, and that can be done in a number of different ways. But usually it is because you have to get some information into your head or into the system that's going to complete some task. And the more efficiently you can acquire that information to be able to master that skill, the more intelligent you are. That's like a very short, at least, description of that. And that in some way, counters with knowledge, which is different. So you can have huge amount of knowledge, it doesn't mean you're intelligent. But you can still have, be really good at the skill because you already have the knowledge. But that's not a good definition of intelligence. Intelligence is really the efficiency you can acquire a skill, so to speak. What do you think about that?
I think that makes sense to me, and it recalls something that Jack Ma of Alibaba said at Davos a couple of years back, relating to education, where he sort of he makes the case for the need for us humans to rethink our value vis-a-vis machines or technology. And he says, specifically in terms of education, that the educational systems have been a fact-based transference situation where you learn facts. So you sort of, and I certainly, that resonates with me. I mean, I recall when I was in school, there was a lot of premium in terms of the grades you got for stuff that you knew. If you just knew, all the lakes in Sweden or, all the capitals in the world, I mean, that was like, that's fantastic. You're so intelligent, but you're not. Like, you're just stuffed with facts. Yeah. And so Jack Ma at that Davos seminar talks about, knowledge base, and how we need to move away from that, because the knowledge acquisition machines do quite well. So there's no premium for us. There's no upside for us to sort of do that. So he would certainly sort of be aligned with what you just said. And also, I think, to talk a little bit about myself, when I went to school early on, like the first 3 years when I went to school, I went to a Montessori school. And so we were different aged kids, and we didn't really have a very strict curriculum. We had sort of, I mean, I was, you're 7, 8, 9, 10 sort of years old. But you had targets in terms of learning that you had to sort of take off by the end of the semester. But you could sort of go about it a little bit the way you felt. So if you wanted to practice English, or if you wanted to go into math, you could sort of spend more time on that. And then when I started mellanstadiet, like the 4th grade, we had moved. So I moved into another school, like a traditional school. And I very early on understood that I knew less than my peers, but I had learned how to learn. Right. So I was pretty good at learning stuff. And that to me then, I sort of internalized that. You're intelligent, Patrick. Fantastic. But then again, so to sort of return to the implications of this, I think you can see this in the impact this has on jobs, for instance, and how premiums will shift from what has been the premium previously to what is perhaps the premium now. And I often use when I'm out talking, I use the example of doctors. So the medical doctor is often someone who has been to school for a long time. So it's a long and extensive knowledge, fact-based program, and you learn a lot of stuff. You learn all the Latin names of the skeletons, parts, and this and that, and you learn about diagnostics and symptoms, and you become this brain, right? But somewhere there, you sort of deprioritize the reason why you're there, in the sense that you de-emphasize the value of caregiving. And so that risk creating doctors that are very knowledgeable, but they're very poor at giving care. So they're knowledgeable, but they are perhaps assholes because they're not empathic. Yeah. They don't understand that what they're saying may have an emotional impact on you way beyond, what you fathom, because you are fact oriented and you sort of want to sort this out, and you forget that it's a human being who's being given like a result of a scan or something and is just shook up. Yeah. So I think now that we're getting AIs into a data-driven care system, the AI can do a lot of that information stuff when it comes to facts and factoids and mapping symptoms to possible underlying causes and And then the doctor or the caregiver will be asked to be more of a fellow human being with good, solid empathy in place, so that still relevant treatment protocol can be given to you in a more loving manner.
And also I think apply what humans can do really well, which is take some kind of piece of information and put it to the proper context and the background knowledge and the reasoning that humans have, which AI, at least today, is very far from having. So I think it's great. Let computers do the boring thing, which is going through a large amount of data, and then let humans use their intelligence and being able to reason about the context and the knowledge they have to really fulfill the task, the skill of building a treatment plan for a cancer patient or whatnot.
But this, what we talked about now, I think is quite profound, and you actually touched my heart, because both my parents are doctors. So I grew up talking or listening to Latin at the kitchen table, right? 10 years old, they're working too much and they're going to jour, night jobs and all, like what it means to become a doctor in their career, having children at the same time. And they are both retired at this point in time in life. And you know how you talk to your dad when you are grown up, and we can now talk about his career, we can talk about this. And this is one of the key things that we talk about, is that what is, to become a really, really good doctor, or the best. He was a surgeon. He was not the best on sort of the all the facts and all that, but he was to take people, and actually really good with his hands. So my dad either wanted to become a carpenter or a surgeon, so actually the skills. And that will also be different when you have robotic skills like that. But I think this is so true, and it really re-emphasizes the whole education system.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fundamentally.
So I certainly foresee a complete, reworking of the medical profession in terms of its education and how you sort of foster things.
And qualification.
First principles.
First
Yes.
principle.
There you have it.
Qualification of what makes a good doctor is essentially different.
Right. I remember I did a short stint at Lärarhögskolan, the University of Teachers, and as part of my studies, I guess. And I still recall the first day there. The teacher asked, what is the most important trait that a teacher has to you? Like, what do you think is the most important thing? And I was thinking, I need to come up with something really clever here. Like, what is it? And then it just struck me, like, if you can make people enthusiastic about the topic, that's it.
Touché.
That's it, right?
I was wondering what you're going to ask as an old football, trainer and all that. This is the key.
Yeah.
How do I start the inner engine of a person to want to learn more?
Right.
That's your main goal.
Right. So it's not about you being enthusiastic about the subject.
It's not about you showing your knowledge supremacy. There's something else.
You want to seduce the other person into loving this thing, because through that love will come knowledge acquisition as a natural aspect.
I couldn't agree more.
So people need to want to learn, otherwise you can't really push knowledge into them, right?
It goes into anything. It's like this classic, how many hours do you need to put in to become a master of something? Football, AI, doctor. You need to love to put in the hours.
Right.
And this is so classical when you have children, right? And my children has been playing football, and all children are unique. And it's a good example, right? Like how, one kid is sort of, he's a little bit into it, and he goes about it, and he's sort of grown more and more into it. And as older he gets. The second kid is, it's a social thing. Don't really care. And then I have my youngest kid is an absolute football nerd, right? So it doesn't really matter when you're a young kid and they have like 1 or 2 hours practice per week, because he goes down with his friends to Värmdövallen, and I drop him off at 10 o'clock and I can't get him out of there at 6 o'clock, and he spent, you will get good. Yeah. You will get really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that great, there's a great Alan Watts. I don't know if you like Alan Watts, but you should. It's mandatory to love Alan Watts. So Google Alan Watts. He was a professor in comparative religion, I guess, 50s, 60s on the West Coast. But regardless, he was also into Eastern religion, Zen Buddhism, and there's like a gazillion talks of Alan Watts recorded, and now they're all like floating around on the internet. But there's one great thing where he goes, my piece of advice to people in school, and he basically says, you need to figure out what you love. Mm-hmm. Once you figure out what you love, you go do that, and then the rest will follow. And Joseph Campbell had the same thing about follow your bliss, right? Mm-hmm. And he basically Alan basically goes, if you don't love what you do, you're not going to excel at it. Mm-hmm. But if you do love what you do, you will eventually master it, given your whatever constraints you have. But there is an element of fear associated to that, because if you love something that you think may be outlandish or not financially viable today, you may shy away from that. But Alan is basically saying, hey, if you love it, you're going to turn that thing into such an awesome thing that you're going to be able to commercialize it. Don't worry about it. But that faith in the victory of love over fear is not that easy to maintain.